Hello and welcome to this From the Ground Up session. Today I want to talk about the customized import. First a bit of theory, and afterwards I'm going to show you 3 examples. You're going to get the data so you can redo everything that I'm doing, play around, and then apply it on your own data sets. So what is a customized import? It allows you to streamline your import and batch create projects, and also creating a standardized template that you can reuse for the creation of projects. Imagine you have 1000 tiles in a folder and you want to create a project for each file. Doing it manually takes a bit of time, but we do have functionalities implemented in eCognition to allow batch creation of projects, and that's actually what we're going to have a look at exactly in this session. So we do have predefined import routines and customized import. I'm going to talk about this in a second. So this is actually, these import routines are an efficient mechanism for loading large data sets into a workspace environment. And you always work in a workspace in eCognition, right? It's a default workspace if you haven't saved it yet. So you always can make use of this functionality. The file structure, however, needs to follow a consistent pattern. So you define certain rules and a search string in a customized import, for example, and then eCognition looks into those directories and creates projects based on your definition. If the files are all over the place, it simply doesn't make sense to create a customized import because you cannot define rules to pick up all those files. So if they follow a certain structure, it's easy to create such a customized import, or even use predefined import routines, and then you're gonna have your projects created automatically. As mentioned before, we have predefined import routines and customized import. Predefined imports are generic import templates for simple file structures. I'm gonna show you that also in a second. That means if you have, for example, as said before, 1000 tiles or files in a certain folder, we do have a predefined import that looks or creates for each file it finds in a folder a project. And then it's just a 2-click procedure and it's gonna create a project for each file it finds in a certain directory. But at some point, these predefined import routines that we have might not be enough, and I'm gonna show you why. And then you can use the customized import, so you can create your own import routine for more complicated file structures, right? And also what is very cool is in the customized import, you also can import a vector into the project automatically. You can rename the layer aliases, you can define the project resolution, and so on. So a lot of possibilities here. And yeah, I'm gonna show you 3 examples how you can use those tools. The customized import routine, first of all, to create projects based on a certain folder structure. Quickly, the 3 examples that we're gonna have. First example is gonna be simply tiles in a folder that you want to load into eCognition, and we're gonna create a project for each file in a certain folder and already rename the layer aliases during import. So you have already the layer aliases renamed in the project import, so during the import. And it also should load a shapefile that we have in a folder to each project. So it's going to be 6 or 7 tiles or something, and then we're going to use a customized import routine that creates a project for all of those, renames the layer aliases, and loads the shapefile. Then the second example is going to be Sentinel-2 raw data, more or less. So if you download Sentinel-2 data, you're going to have a certain folder structure, and the files, the images are fairly hidden, very deep in the folder structure. And what we want to do is we want to create a project for a folder and load multiple layers or images into one project. So what we want to have is we want to have a customized import routine that imports or creates a project based on the raw data folder structure when you download Sentinel-2, and it should load all the files from a certain directory and create a project automatically. And then last but not least, exercise or example number 3, what we want to do is create a project for each file it finds in the Sentinel-2 directory, right? So not one project and loading all the files for one tile, but one file should create one project, and we're gonna take care of the layer aliases, and we're gonna also create a folder in the workspace defining the name of the tile, for example. Okay, so 3 examples. Let's start with the first one. So they're getting more complicated. The first one is the easiest one, the second one is a bit more complicated, and the third one is slightly more complicated than the second one. Okay, let's hop in and enjoy. All right, let's have a look at the first example. I have here a Sentinel-2 image, actually without georeference, and I've downloaded it here on this site here from the European Space Agency, where they put up images of the week. Stunning images, so if you're into remote sensing, have a look at this site. It's simply amazing. And I took which one? This one, Space Coast, Florida. And I actually created tiles for that image, and also vector, a polygon vector which covers all of the tiles. And that's a scenario which all of you probably have. So you have data sets that are from the same sensor, they have the same bands and so on, and you want to create a project for each file you have and load the same vector. You could do it manually, which would be, gonna go for one tile here, simply drag and drop, and then you have this image in the eCognition developer, and the vector is missing as well, which is the rocket shapefile. Drag and drop it, and it's also there. The issue here now is that the image layers aliases are named layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and the thematic layer is called thematic layer 1. And if you always have the same data sets, you probably want to have renamed aliases to RGB and the vector layers to AOI or something else. Some probably do it manually here, right? Double click it, so that's possible. Red, green, but it's laborious. Imagine you have 100 projects to create, and that would be very laborious. You're also probably gonna introduce some typos, and that's gonna be an issue. Now, let me delete this project. No. As mentioned before, we do have these predefined imports. Actually, you could use this, one of those. So what do we have here? Some predefined ones. Generic raster, 1 scene per folder or 1 file per scene. 1 file per scene would or will create 1 project per file it finds. And what you need to define is the parent root folder, which is the tiles folder in my case, and also in your case. And you already see in the preview is gonna create a project for each tile. Hit OK. And then you're gonna have those projects created automatically. However, the issue here is that you are not able to add a shapefile in this predefined import, and also the image layer aliases are named by the loading order, so that's the default naming. In this case, you could think about creating a customized import routine. So if you right click here in the workspace, instead of predefined import, you can create the customized or use the customized import. Here you have full freedom and full flexibility to create your own customized import. I'm gonna call it Space Coast import. And we're gonna keep it simple, right? Root folder, that's what you have to define. So you have to define this tiles folder, and then 1 master file, which serves as blueprint for this customized import. So I'm gonna simply choose the first one, the first tile, and actually we don't have to change anything here. But what you actually can do now, if you go to the image layer tabs, you can actually define the aliases already. So the aliases are created or renamed during the import. We have a 3-band image, so we simply can type it in here: red, green, and blue. And we're gonna leave this now as it is. And we have this thematic layers tab. We don't have a thematic layer yet, but we can click add layer. And now we can add a thematic layer. If you go here in geometry search string, go to from file and navigate to that rocket shape file. Alias is the alias that you define. So this is gonna be I'm just gonna call it rocket. Actually, the whole shapefile looks like a rocket. It looks like a funny rocket, to be honest. Yeah, that's already it. Hit OK, and you can leave all the rest default. Before we execute it, you also can save it or clear everything, but that should work. I'm gonna click OK, and then it should create for each file it finds in this tile folder a project. And yeah, that worked. Now we can open a project, and you see the aliases have been renamed already, and we have the vector called rocket. And this is true for each single project. That is amazing. We leave it at that. So the cool thing is now if you again choose customized import, it keeps the previous input in here, right? But we will save it. Hit the save button, and then it's gonna be available. You can load it and use it. Yeah, Space Coast import, hit save, and now you could either load it here, it's an XML file, so you load it and it's gonna fill in all those information. Or what is really nice is that it now, if you save it in the default directory, right? In this directory here, app data, roaming, eCognition, the version, import. If you save it here, it will automatically pop up as a predefined import, right? See it here, Space Coast import. And now you can do, I'm quickly going to delete all of those, but now delete predefined import. And here you only have to define the root folder and then hit OK, and that's gonna work as well. Right, I'm simply opening some projects and you see everything is as expected. And that's very nice. I mean, if you're always working with Sentinel-2 or the same data sets, and if you create once this customized import routine, you simply can use it as a predefined import, and the project setup is always gonna be the same, and you're not running into issues if you define different layer aliases, then you load the rules that it doesn't work because you have different layer aliases and so on. So you overcome a lot of issues if you're using a customized import, and then the project is created the same way for each file. Yeah, let's quickly have a look at the whole rocket. A quick thing that I'm gonna show you is nice. It's actually very nice. There's a nice predefined import, which is called raster stitching, one project per folder. This is actually creating a temporary mosaic of your tiles. Define the root folder, and that should create a project with all the tiles. Here we go. So that's a stitched project. And I'm gonna load, actually, I'm simply gonna drag and drop this rocket so you see the whole thing. What a nice rocket. All right, so that's the whole thing. And that was the predefined import here, which creates a stitched raster, a temporary raster that you can segment, classify, export your results. You can do anything. You actually can also tile it again within eCognition, and the advantage now, if you do the tiling here, is that you can run analysis on the single tiles and then stitch it back together using stitch projects. And then you have a wall-to-wall classification of the whole stitched image. That's the first example. Okay, let's have a look at another example. In this S2 raw folder, which stands for Sentinel-2, I have 3 different Sentinel-2 tiles that I've downloaded. And that's also something that most of you probably do, right? Downloading raw data. And in the case of Sentinel-2, actually the image layers are fairly hidden. If I'm gonna go into the first folder, there's a subfolder. You have to go to this one here and then image data. And there you have all the bands in single JPEG 2000 files. Overall 14 bands, right? Let's assume that you want to have a project where you have all the files loaded for one tile, okay? So actually my idea is to create a customized import which creates for each tile a project in the workspace holding all these files. Moreover, what I want to do is I want to restrict the customized import routine to only load bands that end with a number. So I don't want to have this B8A band and I don't want to have this TCI band loaded into the project. And also the layer aliases should be named after these 3 digits. So B02 would be an alias for this specific band. So there is no predefined import. If you do it manually, it's quite laborious. So let's try to create a customized import and then you set it up once and then you can load, in this case, Sentinel-2 images with one click and you don't have to care about aliases and band order and things like that. Okay, so let's start this. So here we do have eCognition developer. On the left hand side of workspace, again, right click, customized import. This is the previous one. I'm just gonna clear that one. And I'm gonna call this Sentinel-2 one scene. Yeah, one scene per folder. Okay, so that's going to be the name of my customized import. Root folder, I need to change that to the S2 raw. Select folder. And master file needs to be one JPEG 2000 file. So I'm simply going to take the first one of this tile, T19GBQ, and the first band, open. And actually what we now have to do is we have to put in some work here in the search string. In the search string, you see different so-called blocks here, starting with a wavy bracket and ending with a wavy bracket. And here actually in this drop-down, you have all the blocks that you can use to define the search string. And there are actually in the search string 2 types of fields that you can use. One is static and the other one is a variable. And the static field is simply plain text that you insert in this search string. That can be a file name, a folder name, or simply a letter, or parts of those names. I'm going to use a lot of underscores because the underscores are used to separate different parts of the file naming actually for Sentinel-2. And then you have these variable fields. Those are these blocks and they are enclosed in these curly brackets. And they may refer to variables such as layers, folders, or scenes. And variable fields can also be inserted from the insert block drop-down box. That's what I showed you before. So actually you can use these blocks, these variables, to define, for example, layer aliases. So you can reuse those variables also for the scene name, for the name of the thematic layer, and so on. And those fields, those blocks, they can be different from file to file, right? So they are not static and fixed like a fixed underscore. In the scene name, you define the name of the project, the name of the scene. And in this case, it's this block. So it takes whatever it finds here in this section and fills in the scene name. If you hit the test button, you're going to see that is the root folder. Then the scene is actually the name of the file itself. And really important is that the search string is read in reverse. So this reverse actually tells us you can remove it if you like, but usually for these kinds of situations it only makes sense to use reverse. And then it's actually read from behind, so it looks for files that end with this format, JPEG 2000, and then a dot, and then until the backslash we have this scene block, and this is filled with the information of the file name, as you see here, right? That's the file name. I'm gonna pop up the Explorer, right? So it's actually this section here, which is now stored in this scene block. Okay, let's say we simply execute this. You're gonna see it's gonna create a lot of projects because it's gonna create a project for each file, right? It finds, but that's not something we want. That's why I'm gonna delete all of those. What we want is finally 3 projects with only the bands that end with a number. So let's try to get this right. What we need to do is actually we need to insert a block here called layer. And layer actually means that it will treat everything that it finds in that folder as a layer for the project. So it creates one project based on all layers it finds in that specific folder. You need to do this if you want to load multiple layers into one project. Let's test this one and let's see if that works. Okay, that looks good. So you see now, right, we have 14 layers for this scene, 14 for this one as well, yep. But it's not perfect yet because the layer aliases are renamed automatically by eCognition based on their loading order, so layer 1, 2, 3. But what I want to have is I want to have these last 3 digits of the file written automatically here in the image layers aliases, so I exactly know which band is which. So that's pretty easy actually. As you see here, the layer block is holding the information of the last 3 digits because I have this underscore here and scene is the rest of the file name. And now I simply can add this, copy and paste this layer. I can use this also as alias. So that should layer holds this string here, right? And when I insert this into the image layer aliases, it should automatically use this information and rename the aliases. Let's see if that worked. Ah, okay, that looks awesome. Perfect, that's exactly what I want to have. Now last step is remove those files that don't end with a number. And actually what I recommend you to do is check out the user guide under help, offline help, and then simply open the user guide. Okay, so on page 240 in the user guide, you're gonna find more information how you can alter the search string to your needs. And you also have a link here to the regular expression definition that we are using. So there's a lot of possibilities, and actually what I want to have is only the files, right, added to the project that end with a number. And here is one example down here. Create scenes for TIFF images with a digit at the end of the file name. All right, so that looks good. And it's actually this expression here. So this means the file has to end with a 0 or any number until 9, and that doesn't include any letters, so that's exactly what we want. And I'm simply going to add this to the customized import. Here the layer, okay, I have to I use copy and paste one to be lazy, but all right. So layer, I simply added this section here in the wavy brackets of the layer block. And let's test it. It still runs, and that actually forces eCognition to ignore files that end with a letter or any other symbol, right? Hit OK, and now we should finally have what we wanted. The projects and the layer aliases named by the last 3 digits of the respective files. And yeah, you also could kick out automatically the B01, which is, I guess, very noisy. It's not the blue band. I would need to check that. But I think B2 is blue, and that should be yeah, true color composite here. Yeah, so you can actually improve this customized import if you like. But yeah, that's gonna save you a lot of time. It would have been nice actually for me to know this before, because I always spent or wasted a lot of time using manual creation of projects, and I always, as it is, right, I introduced typos, and then I ran into issues with my rule set and so on. So if you choose the customized import, just invest a bit of time if you have set it up once, and then you're good to go, and you're always gonna have standardized creation of your projects. Let me quickly save the customized import. Right, again, if you save it in the directory, in the default directory, it will be available as a predefined import. So I'm gonna save it there. And I'm gonna be happy. All right, the third exercise, we gonna try to create multiple projects per files in folder and create a folder structure in the workspace. And actually the project name should be the acquisition date plus band name, so not the tile name. And the single bands in the project should have the last 3 digits of the file string, so B1, B01, B02, and so on. So that's going to be the layer aliases, and then creating a folder in a workspace with the tile name. So what I want to have is 3 folders, because we have 3 tiles, and the folders should be named based on the tile name of the single scenes. And within those folders that I want to create in the workspace, I want to have then 12 projects actually for each folder, and one project should hold 1 band, and yeah, only those bands that end with a number. I hope that's clear. I mean, it's close to the previous one, and let's just jump in and see how we can get it to work. So customized import, we actually can leave the previous settings that we had. The root folder is still this raw folder, and the master file is the master file. And yeah, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove this layer block, because this layer block made eCognition create a project with multiple layers, but I don't want to have multiple layers per project. I want to have 1 layer per project. And I'm simply going to replace it with any, and any is a very nice placeholder. I'm using it quite often actually. And the cool thing is that any now holds the same information as previously the block layer had. I simply replaced it, and that's the last 3 digits and only those that end with a number. And I'm gonna put this any into the layer alias field. Every time it creates a project, it will rename the layer alias based on this any entry. And you see here it's B01 in this case for this master file. Now the scene. Okay, the scene is tile and the acquisition date. Actually what I want to have is only the acquisition date underscore the band name. So I'm simply going to squeeze in another any between scene and the first any. And actually now we have 2 any's. You see any and any2 down here in the preview. And our last any now became any2, and the first any is still any. So actually what we have to do is we have to change in the image layers tab the alias from any to any2. because that has changed because we've entered another any. And you can have multiple any's, and that's really cool because those can be used here as scene name, as layer aliases, and so on. Let's have a look at the scene names, so the project names that we want to create. And now, right, what we're gonna have is the acquisition date. So that's the any, and then underscore any2. And that should do the trick. So we have projects that are called any2, which is the acquisition date and the band name. And any2 is also used for the layer aliases. So let's hit OK here and see what this does. Okay, we do have projects, that looks good, and the naming also looks good. So acquisition date plus band name. But somehow we only have 24 projects instead of 26, instead of 36 actually. The reason for this is that in the tiles, in the two last tile folders, we do have the same acquisition dates. That means the last tile overrode the projects because they're named exactly the same, simply the acquisition date and the band number. We could overcome this giving the projects unique names, like adding the tile name, but we're gonna take care of this in a second. So we're gonna create a folder with the tile name, and then all should be good, and we should have finally 36 projects. But as you can see here in the view settings, the alias is also renamed. So the alias is the same as the band name in the project name, so that's perfectly fine. The only issue is now that we have projects with the same name and they were overwritten. So let's try to implement this folder structure, and then we should be good to go. And there is a block called folder, which we easily can use, and I'm gonna replace the scene with folder. And that means it's gonna use this string and create a folder in the workspace. And that string, as you see here, is the tile name, T19GBQ. So that's a variable and also has a function, so it creates a folder in the workspace, this folder block. And that's all I'm gonna change. And now we should end up with 3 folders because we have 3 different tiles, and in each folder we should have 12 projects. The whole workspace here, now we have 36 projects, that's perfect. Only those ending with a number, so the 8A, for example, is excluded. And now in each subfolder that we've created here based on the tile name, we have the 12 projects that correspond to that tile. And you're gonna see the last 2 tiles that the naming of the project is identical. So that's why we had the issue, because we didn't differentiate before based on the tiles. Now we did. And you see the naming is exactly the same. So that's it for this session. That's the last example that I want to show you. Now you could save this customized import routine again, and if you save it in the default directory, you're gonna have it available as a predefined import routine. Try it out. I really encourage you to try it out, play around, and invest a bit of time and try to create a customized import for your Landsat data, Sentinels, NL1s, NL2, your UAV data, so you're not limited for your point clouds, whatever, right? Try to get it up and running, and afterwards you're going to save a lot of time, and you're going to have standardized projects. They're always going to look the same, and you can batch create thousands of projects within just a few mouse clicks. All right, please go ahead and try it. It's amazing. If you have questions or concerns, let us know in the eCognition community. Have a great rest of the week, and see you next time.